Welcome once again to Talk of the Nation. Tonight we do discuss transparency and corruption in infrastructure development. Now, in February this year, the Minister for Works and Transport, General Edward Katumba Wamala, commissioned the first Infrastructure Transparency Index and invited government entities to support CoST Uganda for its effective completion. This report presents the results of the inaugural Infrastructure Transparency Index undertaken by CoST Uganda in 2021. Now, the index ran across 30 entities assessing 60 selected infrastructure developments and projects. With me in studio is Kabatwairwe, who is the country manager of CoST Infrastructure Transparency Initiative Index. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. A very good evening.
You're welcome. Good evening, Sandra.
Now, when I look at this report, Uganda is among the 5 countries under CoST international members to pilot this Infrastructure Transparency Index. What is it all about and what does it seek to achieve?
Thank you very much and good evening, viewers. The Infrastructure Transparency Index is a new tool that CoST International has recently launched in November 2020 to help governments measure their levels of transparency, improve accountability, citizen participation, and also look at the internal processes and systems within which infrastructure projects are being planned, procured, and implemented.
So, Uganda, how are we performing? How are we performing? I mean, when I look again at the best performing entities, we do have KCCA, we have Uganda National Roads Authority, we also have the Office of the Prime Minister. In the order of 62%, we have 58% and 48%. These numbers, should they worry us as the country?
Yes, we should be worried because we're not at a distinction. For us to be happy, to praise ourselves that we've realized infrastructure transparency, citizen participation, increased access to information, we need to perform at 100% through the 4 dimensions that the index undertakes. So the index is measured through 4 dimensions, which I may call processes. We look at the enabling environment, which includes the legal and policy framework within the country and how it is being implemented in infrastructure projects. And so Uganda in that dimension scored 41%. We look at the access to disclosure of information on infrastructure projects and how the law is also implemented in that aspect. Uganda scores 18% in this year among the 30 entities. We also look at the citizen participation, the level at which citizens are engaged, how they request for information, and whether they get it, and whether entities have records of their level of citizen engagement. We also look at the existing police platforms and opportunities for citizens to engage.
And so that's area, the criteria that
yes,
you use.
That's the criteria, and in that dimension, Uganda scored 13%. And then we also go deeper and look at this existing capacities and processes and systems for delivering infrastructure projects within the entities. So this information, we receive it through a self-assessment. So the entities that participate in the index receive an online survey which they complete and also provide evidence of the information they provide to us. And then we have an online built system which analyzes the results and provides for us. So under processes and capacities, Uganda still scores low at 13%. So overall, the national score in 2021 is at 20.8% for Uganda, and this is why it indeed a reason to worry. We're not really good, and so we need to strengthen our systems, processes, and enabling environment and conditions for infrastructure.
But it is also the first time we are doing this Infrastructure Transparency Index.
Yes.
Should we have the hope that maybe next year or the year after, and maybe you could also give us an idea on the time frames of you carrying it out?
So the index is a small process which shouldn't really take more than 3 months if entities have embraced, appreciated, and do value the index, because we want to give government and other stakeholders real-time results for them to improve on and most often across the board. So the index helps us to strengthen our systems, processes, but since it's been the very first, the 30 entities were the pilot. The pilot entities, and we really want to commend them, especially the 13 local governments. much as they really scored low in this index, but they're those who really put in interest, like Lira government, Lira local government, Mbale, they really put in a lot of interest to understand. Even at the launch on the 3rd of December, they expressed a lot of interest to participate in prospective indices. So we basically wanted to create awareness on the index, and going forward as we run, we've also received feedback on how we can improve the methodology and how we can improve engaging with the entities to ensure that they respond on time, and then we're able to release a final report on time.
Maybe again, if we are only 5 countries that have undergone this infrastructure transparency index, and I know in Africa it's just Uganda and Ghana, what position are we? Are we number 1, number 2, number 3, number 5?
All the 5 countries scored low, probably because of the effect of the pandemic and the lockdown effects across the board. But we learned that from all the 5 countries, the enabling environment is good. They're performing, it's really good, and it provides ground for CoST to operate in those countries and more. But Uganda scored around 3rd or 4th. We really, because of our performance on citizen participation, which was low, and our performance on access to information, which was very low at 18%, that brought us behind. And so we need to strengthen those aspects if we really want to score highly in the prospective indices.
18% of access to information. I mean, for a long time we've had reports where people are failing to get access to information that they need, you know. But do you think this is as a result of COVID-19, or it has simply showed us what has already been existing in our country? I
think the index and these results have really shown us that this is how we are, and this is a status. Because we've run several assessments, like we've currently completed 5 assurance processes on 49 sampled projects.
Yes.
And all our results have been saying disclosure is low, access information is low. So this now further confirms that indeed our enabling environment might be there, but the legal framework is not being implemented, especially on access to information. The law is not being implemented. Information is not being published on entity websites. When we looked, because the index requires us to assess entity websites as well and see what information they publish on infrastructure projects, you'll find an entity publishing tenders and they end at that. But they're doing so much good work on infrastructure projects. They're launching projects now and again. They're being handed over projects, but this information appears nowhere. And that's why we're calling on NITA to ensure that in some of the entities, their websites are not functional. So functionality of the websites and ensuring that information is published is very key if we really want to improve our situation and our performance on access to information.
So then, how do we use this index to fight corruption? Can it aid in the fight against corruption?
We believe as CoST that access to increased disclosure and an enabling environment, and using our stakeholder working approach, which brings together government, private sector and civil society, and also our social accountability approach, which strengthens citizen engagement and the media and civil society participation in scrutinizing public projects, there will be an informed citizenry, informed engagement, but also there will be trust between all the stakeholders, the contractors, the consultants, the citizens and government on how infrastructure projects are planned, procured and implemented. So if everyone is involved at every step, not only by word, give them the information, empower them to use it and engage and monitor and then report. And when they report, government should be willing to respond and take action on the issues that citizens raise. So if that is done, I think we'll be at a step. But what we would call upon government to do as one of our recommendations in the index is to move away from making bold statements. Take action.
Take action.
The law,
implement them.
yes. The laws give us sanctions for non-performance or non-disclosure. Can we implement them? The law gives us incentives for increased disclosure, increased transparency. Can we implement them? If you've seen there is shoddy work, what action have you made? What action have you taken? We need to get away from speaking. Let's act. And I think if we do that, we'll be able to realize transparency, but also address corruption risks. We shouldn't wait for corruption to happen and then we address it. Let us address the risks associated to corruption, mismanagement. If there are issues in procurement, let's address them. We've been fighting on variations, cost overruns, time overruns. Can we address this before they happen? Let's check the system before things happen, and then we address the ultimate post-mortems. I think that would work.
And maybe finally, as we conclude our conversation this evening, in your recommendations, we do see you encourage citizen participation. Yes. And for those that are watching us tonight, how do they take part in this index? Where do they go to find more information on this exactly?
So we launched an infrastructure transparency results dashboard, which you can find on the website of our host institution, Africa Freedom of Information Center. And you can also find it on our CoST Uganda platforms. Twitter, just type in CoST Uganda, you'll be able to see the information about the index. And it's a public information. So you will see how KCCA performed, how were they analyzed to get to this level, how did we interact with the citizens. All that information is public because it has been launched. It's now an open public information. And then use this information, especially the journalists, the civil society, and government officials to improve. We've already been receiving information from requests from government institutions like Ministry of Water and Environment. They want to see how they can improve. National Social Security Fund, CoST, they also want to see how they can improve. So we see an improving interest, a growing interest for improving transparency within the sector, and we call on citizens to embrace this initiative and support it, and also entities in the upcoming indices to support it and welcome it as something that's coming to help us, not for others.
So if we are having KCCA, Uganda National Roads Authority, and the Office of the Prime Minister being the best performing entities, what are the worst performing entities?
Some of the worst performing entities are local governments. The list was Bukedea local government. They performed 0. And majorly they were local governments that really performed poorly. Bukedea, Ministry of Gender was among the last, and Ministry of Lands, and Makerere University. Those were among the last. What was
the main challenge?
They did not respond effectively to the self-assessment. And remember, this is an assessment that we sent. They had a total of over 32 days to respond to the 5 pages of an assessment. And in those 32 days, there wasn't any response. Some did respond, like 4 entities responded, but they didn't complete the assessment. So incomplete data affects analysis.
True.
And it's difficult for you to take incomplete data. 20 entities did not respond, despite the several engagements. An assessment that was supposed to take 3 months took 7 months. Of course, despite the pandemic, but we kept engaging online with the entities. And we've also learned a lot from this, and we got feedback from the entities on how we can make it better.
Now, speaking about how we can make it better, it's one thing to make recommendations and another to have them implemented. What strategies do you have in place to see that whatever you recommend is actually implemented, especially the citizen participation?
Okay, so when Uganda joined CoST in 2014, they made commitments that they will implement the CoST approach across all infrastructure projects. And so government has a role. It has a role to play, and it has to meet its obligations to these international initiatives, given the fact that it presents a global picture on the country. And so we've been following up. We have a platform, the direct platform with the Ministry of Works and the Office of the Prime Minister. Our reports do feed into the Office of the Prime Minister's annual reports and annual reviews. So the issues we raise are also included within the Prime Minister's strategy to monitor government projects and also government entities. And our engagement cycle, this report was launched on the 3rd of December, and government is invited in these events to make bold commitments. And so we use those commitments to follow up action. We do run a series of follow-up engagements with the entities. We also get to the communities on the projects once in a while and follow up. And we do document impact stories, so you can visit our website and you will see the changes that we see. Our latest story is on 2 projects under Ministry of Water, and we'll see a lot of how citizen engagement has enhanced access to water for production in Mavira Dam and Nyamihanga. these are solar these projects are being implemented to enhance access to water for production. But there were issues on citizen engagement, and we see an improvement.
Great. If the country does not comply, it loses its
membership. Yes. Africa has lost 2 countries already. Botswana was a member of CoST, and they're no longer a member. Tanzania was a member of CoST. Last year, they were deactivated for failure to comply with their commitments to CoST International. So the international board keeps monitoring governments, and they do write letters. So if a government does not comply, progressively report on how they are improving. But Uganda is really doing good. Uganda is doing good, and we want to commend the ministry for mothering us and supporting the initiative. And we call on all the other entities to support the initiative. We know with your support we can get there, and we need much of your support. Great. All stakeholders.
Thank you so much, Olive Kabatwairwe, who's the country manager of CoST Infrastructure Transparency Initiative, joining us tonight. You're still watching NTV Weekend Edition. We'll take a short break and we'll be back shortly.